Welcome to a deep dive. Today we're looking at something maybe a bit specific, but the numbers are fascinating. Polymer objective lenses.
That's right. We've got this market research report excerpt here from Cognitive Market Research. It gives us a really good look.
Yeah, maps out the past, present, and where things might be headed.
Exactly. We've got figures from 2021, projections for 2025, and forecasts stretching out to 2033.
Okay, so our job today is to, wade through these numbers and figure out what's really going on. Why the growth? Why should you care?
Precisely. These lenses are sort of hidden components in a lot of tech we use. Understanding this market tells us about bigger trends.
All right, let's get into it. The big picture first, the global market for these polymer lenses.
Okay. So back in 2021, globally, we're talking $407.7 million.
Okay.
By 2025, that's expected to climb to $1,880 million. And then looking way out to 2033, the forecast hits $3,352.9 million.
Wow, okay. So more than double between 2021 and 2033. That's pretty serious growth.
It really is. The report calculates the compound annual growth rate, the CAGR, at 7.5%.
7.5%. Yeah, that's strong, especially over that kind of time frame. What does the report say is pushing this?
Well, the key drivers mentioned are things like increasing adoption because they're lightweight, they're affordable, and they offer high performance.
Okay, let's pause there. Lightweight, affordable. I get that. That makes sense for lots of applications. But high performance. For polymer lenses, I think some people still think glass is kind of the only way for top quality optics.
Yeah, that's a fair point, but polymer optics technology has come a really long way. Unlike glass that needs grinding and polishing, many polymer lenses can be injection molded.
Right, so mass production becomes much easier, much cheaper.
Exactly. Faster, cheaper at scale. Now, are they going to beat the absolute highest end, most expensive glass lens in every single scenario? Maybe not. But for a huge and growing range of uses, the performance is absolutely good enough, sometimes even excellent relative to the cost and weight savings. That's the key.
Ah, okay. So it's that trade-off, or rather that balance. Yeah. Performance that meets the need combined with big wins on cost and weight. That's what's opening the door.
Precisely.
And where does the source say we're seeing them most?
The report highlights three main areas. Imaging systems generally, consumer electronics, think cameras, sensors in your phone, that sort of thing, and also biomedical optics.
Makes sense. Consumer electronics is all about volume, cost, weight, and imaging, biomedical.
Yeah.
Those fields are moving so fast. If polymers offer a more cost-effective way to get the job done, that enables a lot.
That's the idea, enabling new tech or making existing tech more accessible.
Okay, great overview. Let's shift gears now and look at the regions. The source breaks this down quite a bit, which is helpful to see where the growth is hottest, starting with North America.
Yep, North America. In 2021, the market there was $394.2 million.
Okay.
It's projected to get to $511.4 million in 2025, and then $875.1 million by 2033.
And the regional CAGR.
That comes in at 6.9% for North America.
So, solid, but actually a little under that global 7.5% average we talked about.
Right, and within the region, the U.S. is, well, the giant.
No surprise there.
Yeah, $325.8 million back in 2021. The forecast is $420.6 million for 2025 and $715.5 million for 2033. And its CAGR is 6.9%, basically matching the region because it's such a large part of it.
What about Canada and Mexico? Do they follow the same trend?
Interestingly, their growth rates are forecast slightly higher. Canada goes from $41.9 million to $55.4 million, then $98.4 million by 2033. That's a 7.4% CAGR.
Okay, higher than the U.S. rate.
And Mexico is similar, $26.4 million, then $35.3 million, hitting $61.3 million in 2033. That's what the numbers seem to suggest, yeah.
All right, let's hop across the pond to Europe. What's the story there?
Europe's market in 2021 was $342.1 million. It's expected to grow to $445.6 million by 2025, and then $784.6 million by 2033.
And its regional growth rate?
Europe's CAGR is 7.3%. So, closer to the global average compared to North America.
Any particular countries really driving things in Europe?
Well, the source specifically calls out Germany. It has a particularly strong growth forecast, 7.8% CAGR.
Okay, 7.8%, that's notable, higher than the regional average.
Yeah, it goes from $58.8 million in 21 to $78.9 million in 25, and projected $143.6 million by 2033. So a key engine there.
How about other big European economies, like the UK or France?
The UK is also strong, 7.6% CAGR. That's $37.6 million up to $89.4 million by 33. France is a little more moderate at 6.7% CAGR.
Nice.
Italy is mentioned as having sort of the most modest growth among those listed large economies, 6.4% CAGR. Starts at $22.2 million, goes to $44.7 million.
Still growing, but slower.
Right. And then you have Russia, steady at 7%, Spain at 7.1%. Even smaller players like Luxembourg are showing decent growth, 6.8%.
And what about the rest of Europe category? Sometimes that hides interesting trends.
It does here, actually. The rest of Europe segment, lumped together, is forecast to grow at 7.8%.
Wow, same as Germany's rate.
Exactly. It
Oh.
grows from $86.2 million to $214 million by 2033. So yeah, it suggests that while Germany is a powerhouse, the demand for these lenses is broadening out across the whole continent pretty strongly.
Fascinating. Okay, now for the region that often grabs headlines in tech growth, Asia Pacific.
Absolutely. And the source confirms that here. Asia Pacific is highlighted as having the most robust growth globally for these polymer lenses.
Already the biggest market too, right?
By far. It was $520.2 million back in 2021. Expected to hit $698.4 million by 2025, and then nearly doubles again to $306 million. That's $1.3 billion by 2033.
And the regional TGR must be pretty high then.
It is an impressive 8.1%. That's the highest regional rate in the report. This area is really setting the pace.
So who's the main driver within APAC?
China.
China's definitely leading in terms of overall market size and its growth. It starts at $222.8 million in 21, forecast to reach $565.9 million by 2033. That's an 8.2% CAGR. Huge numbers.
Right.
But interestingly, the report points to India as having the strongest country-specific growth rate. Oh, really? What are India's numbers?
India's market was $92.6 million in 2021, projected $128.5 million in 2025, and then a jump to $249.4 million by 2033. That reflects a CAGR of 8.6%.
8.6%. Okay, that's the highest rate we've seen anywhere.
It is the highest country rate mentioned in the whole report excerpt.
What does that tell you, especially seeing China and India leading like this?
Well, given these are enormous markets, especially for consumer electronics, and they're very cost sensitive, it really underlines how critical those affordability and scalability factors are for polymer lenses.
Right, the mass production advantage.
Exactly. Being able to make them cheaply in huge volumes is likely a massive driver there, maybe even more so than squeezing out the last bit of optical performance for certain applications. This is probably where a huge chunk of the volume is going.
That makes a lot of sense. It connects the why back to the numbers. How about other places in Asia Pacific? Japan, South Korea.
Japan.
This audio was created with Podcastle.ai.
How about other places in Asia Pacific? Japan, South Korea.
Japan shows steady growth, 7.6% CAGR, going from $56.5 million to $131.4 million. South Korea is at 7.3%, $36.4 million to $79.07. Australia, 7.1%, $14.77 and to $31.31. Okay.
And Southeast Asia as a whole is also a significant contributor, growing at 7.4% CAGR from $77.3 million up to $186 million by 2033. So yeah, India and China are really pushing things, but the whole region is expanding rapidly.
All right, let's cover South America. The source pulled out some numbers there too.
It did. And Brazil stands out. It's projected to grow from $29.2 million in 2021 up to $86.6 million by 2033. That's a 7.9% CAGR.
Wow, 7.9%. That's really strong, well above the global average.
It is quite remarkable. Argentina also shows solid growth, 7.2% CAGR, $9.09, $26.18. Peru is at 7.1%, Chile 7.4%. So while the absolute market sizes are smaller than, say, North America or Asia, the growth rates across South America, especially Brazil and Colombia, are definitely noteworthy. Adoption seems strong.
Good point. Okay, last region, Middle East and Africa. The report seemed a bit more cautious here.
Yeah, positive but more modest, I think, was the general tone from the numbers provided. Growth is happening, just maybe not quite as fast as other places.
Well, Egypt shows the most modest rate highlighted in the report, a 5.7% CAGR, going from $8.4 million to $16.8 million by 2033.
5.7. Okay, still positive growth, but definitely a different gear than the 7s and 8s we saw elsewhere.
Exactly. Turkey is a bit higher at 6.3% CAGR, $6.09, $15.02. And the rest of the Middle East segment comes in at 5.9%, $12.02, $24.08.
So participating in the trend, but maybe the specific drivers we talked about, consumer electronics volume, certain industrial applications might be playing out at a slightly different pace there?
That seems to be the implication from the data, yes.
Okay, let's pull this all together then. If you had to summarize the main story from this report excerpt, what would it be?
The big takeaway is that this polymer objective lenses market is really in a phase of significant global transformation and pretty rapid expansion.
And that's being fueled by, as we discussed, the innovation making polymers more capable, the huge demand from consumer electronics needing cheap, light components, and broader use in medical and industrial fields.
Right. And the numbers clearly show this playing out across the globe, strong growth in North America, Europe, Asia-Pacific, Latin America.
With Asia-Pacific really leading the charge, especially China for size and India for that incredible growth rate, likely tied to that affordability factor.
Exactly. It paints a picture of a technology that's really found its sweet spot, balancing performance, cost, and physical properties in a way that's driving widespread adoption.
It's not just growing, it's, like you said, transforming things, with regions like Asia-Pacific becoming even more central because of manufacturing scale and those huge consumer markets.
Precisely.
Okay, so let's bring this back to you listening in. Think about the gadgets you use every day, with lenses, your phone, webcam, maybe sensors you don't even see.
Right.
This deep dive shows the market for the tiny polymer lenses inside those things is set to boom, more than doubling by 2033. It's not just abstract economics, it's about the bits and pieces going into your future tech.
Yeah, they're the quiet enablers making things smaller, lighter, maybe more powerful, or certainly, as we saw, more affordable.
Exactly. So here's something to chew on, just based on what this report suggests. With this huge growth, driven by things like cost and performance hitting the right spot, how might this flood of polymer objective lenses actually change the design and the accessibility of the optical tech you rely on between now and 2033? Will your phone camera just keep getting better for the same price or cheaper? Could we see new kinds of medical imagers becoming commonplace because the optics aren't as expensive anymore?
It definitely gives you a lot to think about looking at those market trends and drivers. It points towards some real shifts in how we access and use optical technology.
Indeed. And that wraps up our deep dive today into the polymer objective lenses market. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Welcome to this deep dive.
Glad to be here.
Today, we're pulling back the curtain on a piece of technology that's, well, increasingly hiding in plain sight. It's in the devices you use every single day. Polymer objective lenses.
That's right. We've got our hands on a pretty solid analysis of the market dynamics for these lenses.
And our mission today
is basically to give you the essential insights. Think of it like the fast track, understanding what's really driving their rise.
new challenges they're facing.
Exactly. And maybe most importantly, where this tech is headed next.
Because so many gadgets, medical tools even, they rely on these tiny lenses.
And polymer is really changing the game.
In ways you might not even realize.
Yeah.
So let's jump right in.
Let's do it.
Okay, let's start unpacking this. When we look at the polymer objective lens market, what's like the single biggest force pushing its growth right now?
Right. It really comes down to this relentless demand for optical systems that are incredibly lightweight and compact.
Okay, I mean, that makes intuitive sense for, say, a smartphone camera. We all want thinner phones.
Sure.
But why is it so critical across the board? Is it just phones?
Oh, definitely not. Think beyond phones. You've got AR/VR headsets, drones, even some advanced medical tools.
Right, things you wear or things that fly.
Exactly. In those devices, every milligram, every cubic millimeter, it just counts.
Because traditional glass lenses can be hefty.
It can get heavy and bulky, yeah. Especially if you need multiple lens elements together for good performance. Polymer offers that, inherent lightweight.
And it lets you shrink things down more easily.
Precisely. It gives designers the ability to miniaturize designs in ways glass often can't quite match.
So you're saying you can get, like, serious optical performance without that classic bulk and weight penalty.
Pretty much, yeah. Which is hugely compelling for anything portable.
It must free up designers quite a bit.
It absolutely does. Smaller, lighter, more ergonomic devices become possible. But, it's not just about being small and light. There's another massive driver.
Oh, yeah. What's that?
Something you might not immediately connect with precision optics. Cost-effective mass production.
Hang on. How can precision optics be cheap to make? Especially at scale.
Well, that's the key insight here. See, unlike traditional glass lenses, which often need a lot of grinding, polishing, labor-intensive stuff.
Right, very hands-on.
Polymer lenses can be made using something called precision injection molding.
Injection molding, like for plastic parts.
Basically, yes. You inject liquid polymer into a highly precise mold, let it cool, and pop out a lens.
So you can almost stamp them out. But with optical precision.
Sort of, yeah. High-precision stamping, you could say. This method allows for incredibly high-volume manufacturing and at a significantly lower cost per unit once you've actually made that initial mold.
Wow. That sounds huge for industries that need millions of lenses.
Exactly. Think consumer electronics.
Phones again?
Phones, cameras in cars, even certain disposable medical diagnostic tools.
Okay, right. So affordability paired with the ability to just churn them out in vast quantities.
That's a really powerful combination for widespread adoption, a winning formula. And actually, speaking of medical devices, that brings us neatly to our third major growth driver. Polymer lenses are seeing a real surge in use within biomedical imaging and diagnostics.
Interesting. What is it about polymers that makes them such a good fit for healthcare specifically?
Well, a couple things stand out. First, they can be made biocompatible.
Meaning they don't cause issues inside the body?
Correct. They don't react negatively. And crucially, they can also be made disposable.
Disposable lenses.
Yeah.
For something like, I don't know, surgery. That sounds like a totally different way of thinking.
It really is. For applications like, say, endoscopic procedures.
Okay.
Or lab-on-a-chip systems, or those rapid point-of-care diagnostic tests. Disposability is a major advantage.
From a hygiene perspective, I guess.
Absolutely. Hygiene, logistics. Use it once, then you toss it. No need for complex sterilization. No worries about cross-contamination.
Right.
And as healthcare keeps shifting towards less invasive techniques and faster diagnostics outside traditional labs, polymer lenses just fit perfectly into that whole workflow.
So it's not just the technical properties, it's how those properties enable fundamental shifts in medical procedures.
Yeah.
That's really fascinating.
It is, yeah.
All right, so we've got these big forces pushing things forward, miniaturization needs, cheap mass production, and this growing role in medicine. But let's be real, nothing's perfect.
Definitely not.
What's holding these polymer lenses back? What are the downsides?
I'd say the most significant limitation is pretty fundamental. Compared to traditional glass,
Yeah,
polymers generally just have lower optical performance in certain key areas.
but I thought polymer tech had come a long way. People talk about improvements all the time.
Oh, it absolutely has, no question. And the gap has definitely narrowed significantly over the years, but
There's still a but.
there is. Glass still typically outperforms polymers when it comes to things like refractive index.
Which is how well it bends light.
Exactly how efficiently it bends light. Also, thermal stability polymers can be more sensitive to temperature changes
Okay.
and resistance to chromatic aberration.
Ah, that fuzzy color fringing you sometimes see.
Oh.
Purple edges on things.
That's the one. So for those, ultra high-end cameras or scientific instruments where even tiny imperfections really matter.
Polymer can still be a bottleneck.
It can be, yeah. There are applications where...
This audio was created with podcastle.ai.
Polymer can still be a bottleneck.
It can be, yeah. There are applications where the intrinsic properties of glass are just still essential for getting the precision you absolutely need. And another pretty big challenge is environmental sensitivity.
Meaning they don't hold up as well as glass.
Pretty much. Polymer lenses just aren't as robust.
What kind of environments cause trouble for them?
Things like prolonged exposure to UV light sunshine, basically.
Right.
Or drastic temperature swings, high humidity. These things can cause the polymer to degrade over time.
Degrade how? Like they get cloudy?
Yeah, they could lose clarity or even slightly change shape, which obviously impacts optical performance.
Okay, that sounds like it would really limit their use outdoors.
It does.
Or maybe in like harsh industrial settings.
Yeah.
Anywhere that isn't nicely climate controlled.
Exactly. It restricts usage in those kinds of tough environments. Unless manufacturers add specific stabilizers into the polymer mix or apply protective coatings.
Ah, but that adds costs back in, right? And maybe complexity.
It can, yes. So durability in tough conditions, that definitely remains a hurdle for polymers compared to glass.
And then there's the design side. It sounds like sometimes to get the performance you need out of polymer, you have to make the design itself quite complicated.
You've hit on it. The complexity of designing multi-layer systems to kind of compensate for some of the polymer's inherent limitations, that's another restraint.
So you can't just swap a simple glass lens for a simple polymer one and expect the same result?
Often not, no.
Oh.
Especially for demanding applications. To achieve optical performance that's comparable to glass, engineers often can't just use one simple polymer lens.
What do they do instead?
They might need to design systems with multiple polymer elements stacked together, or even, and this is interesting, combine polymer elements with glass elements in a single lens system.
Okay, so wait. You start looking at polymer because it's light and cheap,
Right.
but then you might end up building a complex stack of lenses, maybe even mixing materials.
Precisely. And while these hybrid designs or multi-element polymer designs, they do improve performance.
But they chip away at the original benefits.
They can, yeah. They can reduce or sometimes even completely negate those initial cost and weight advantages that made you look at polymer in the first place.
And I bet it adds design time, too. More headaches.
It certainly can. More design iterations, potentially more complex manufacturing challenges. It's always a trade-off you have to evaluate carefully.
Okay. So we've seen the exciting drivers pushing them forward and these, well, very real restraints holding them back. Given all this tension, this push and pull, what are the big trends shaping the future of this market? Where's it going?
Well, the innovation certainly hasn't stopped, that's for sure. One major trend is just the continuous advancement in the performance of the polymer materials themselves.
Better plastics, basically.
Essentially, yeah. But highly engineered plastics. We're seeing newer materials like advanced polycarbonates and something called cyclic olefin copolymers, COCs.
Okay, COCs. What's special about them?
They offer significant improvements, things like better durability, improved clarity, and importantly, better resistance to heat and moisture compared to some of the earlier polymers.
Ah, so these new materials are directly attacking those performance and environmental weak spots we just talked about.
Exactly. These material developments are absolutely critical. They're pushing the boundaries of where polymer lenses can realistically be used.
Opening up new possibilities.
Definitely. Things like higher resolution imaging or more demanding, complex optical systems that maybe previously only glass could handle. Then another key trend, and this feels like a natural fit, is the growing integration of polymer lenses into augmented reality and wearable technology.
Right. That makes total sense. Going back to the lightweight aspect we started with.
It is, yeah, weight is huge there. But it's also about shape.
Shape. How so?
Think about AR glasses or VR headsets. They often need lenses with really complex curves or irregular shapes.
Things that aren't just simple circles.
Exactly. Or non-standard optical designs. This is all to fit them into compact near-eye display systems and, enhance the user's immersive experience.
And polymers are easier to mold into weird shapes.
Much easier and cheaper than grinding glass into those forms. That design flexibility you get with injection molding is perfect for creating these unique optical forms.
Ah, so it's not just light and cheap for wearables. It's also about enabling completely new form factors that are essential for making them comfortable and effective.
You got it. It's an enabling technology for that whole sector. And then finally, kind of building on that complexity challenge we mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
There's a significant rise in what are called hybrid lens systems.
Is that the best of both worlds idea, mixing glass and polymer?
That's precisely the philosophy behind it, yes. These are optical assemblies, lens systems that strategically combine both polymer and glass elements.
How does that work in practice?
Well, you might use a glass element where you absolutely need that high refractive index or top-notch thermal stability.
The strength of glass.
Right. And then you use polymer elements where weight is critical, or cost is a major driver, or you need one of those complex shapes we just talked about.
So you kind of cherry pick the best material for each specific job within the one lens system.
Exactly. It's a very pragmatic approach. You leverage the established high performance of glass where it counts most, while still benefiting from the design freedom and the cost advantages of polymer for other parts of the system.
Makes sense. Are these catching on?
Definitely. We're seeing these hybrid designs gaining real traction across a whole range of fields. Healthcare, defense optics, even advanced consumer cameras are using them now.
So, pulling all this together then, the polymer objective lenses market is really navigating a dynamic landscape, isn't it? It's at a fascinating intersection.
It really is. It's clearly being propelled forward by this massive demand for smaller, lighter, and more affordable optics.
Especially driven by that explosion in consumer tech and also those evolving healthcare needs we discussed.
Absolutely. But at the same time, they're still wrestling with those fundamental challenges.
Trying to match glass's ultimate performance in some areas.
And improving that environmental resilience, yeah. Those remain key hurdles.
Yet, despite those hurdles, the ongoing material science breakthroughs
and the smart adoption of these hybrid design strategies,
they seem to be continually expanding what's possible with polymers. It's not standing still.
Not at all. The goalposts are constantly moving.
And this isn't just abstract tech talk for engineers. This is technology that's quietly enabling the next generation of devices.
The very devices you'll hold, you'll wear.
Things you'll rely on for everything from, taking photos to getting medical diagnoses. It's becoming quite integral.
It really is. So maybe a final thought to leave people with. Considering this ongoing tug of war, right, between pushing the limits of pure polymer material
versus strategically blending polymers with glass in these hybrid systems.
and remembering that traditional glass itself is also still evolving, what fundamental breakthrough, maybe something we haven't even touched on, might truly disrupt this whole picture?
What could define the ideal lens material for that next generation of incredibly precise, incredibly lightweight, and crucially affordable optical systems of tomorrow?
That's the big question, isn't it? Where does the next leap come from?
This audio was created with Podcastle.ai.